Hello guys, it's Mr. HorrorBot and today I will be doing 10 true scary stories. Number 10. This is a story that my dad shared with me. He grew up in a small suburb community of Stowe, Ohio with his parents and older sister. Across the street lived a boy named Richard Wade Cooey. He was the same age as my dad and described him as a scrawny, red-headed troublemaker. He would spit on people as they walked by and even set a house on fire in the neighborhood and blamed it on a kid who had special needs. Nothing he did as a child, however, could compare to the crime he committed when he was only 19 years old. My dad had just started his sophomore year of college when he heard the news. Richard and his friends Clinton and Kenneth were throwing pieces of concrete off a local bridge onto the interstate when one of them struck the vehicle of 21-year-old Wendy Offerendug. Her friend, 20-year-old Dawn McCreary, was also in the car. They were sorority sisters who had just gotten off work at a local restaurant. At this point, Kenneth decided he had enough and went home. This is when Richard and Clinton came up with their evil scheme. Both of the young men approached the girls, offering them help, offering to give them a ride. They drove the girls to a shopping center where they told them to call their parents and let them know that they were all right. The two then forced the girls back into the car, tied their hands together and drove them to a field behind a local mall where they raped, stabbed, and tortured them for 3 grueling hours. They abandoned their bodies in the field, but only after they carved large X's on their stomachs. Richard and Clinton then decided they wanted to sell the girls' clothing and jewelry to make some extra cash. When Richard couldn't find a buyer for the items, he burned them in his backyard, which woke my grandparents. My grandfather called the police to report what he thought was yet another neighborhood disturbance from Richard. The police gathered the items for evidence and after finding Wendy's abandoned car, they arrested Richard and began the investigation. Clinton and Richard were both arrested and charged with the murders. They had found a bloody pocket knife used to stab Wendy in the neck in Clinton's pocket when he was arrested, and some of the burned items still had traces of the girl's blood. Since Clinton was only 17, he was spared the death sentence and currently is serving life in prison. Richard, however, was given the death penalty. On October 14, 2003 at 10 a.m. he was executed by lethal injection. Wendy's family was present at his execution. Every time I visit my grandparents and look across the street at that house, I can't help but to get the chills. Richard, I'm glad we never met and I'm certainly glad my dad was smart enough to not become your friend growing up. Number 9. Recall this incident happening when I was in the 4th grade, but every now and then I recall this event and shivers run down my spine. My little brother is 4 years younger than me, so I've always felt it my responsibility to protect him. If anything happened to him I would consider it my fault. This night of the incident, my mother brings the two of us to Dominic's relatively late at night and as we're in checkout my little brother says he has to use the bathroom. My mom tells me to accompany him and I go instinctively. We walk from the register towards the bathroom which is positioned towards the front of the store, so it wasn't completely secluded. I would have normally gone into the bathroom with him, just to wash my hands and make sure that he handled everything, but for whatever reason that night he went in by himself, and I just waited near the bathroom door instead of going inside. It's been so long that this has happened that I'm not entirely sure of the exact time it took my brother to get out of the bathroom, but when he finally came out he told me that some guy in the bathroom asked him questions about his wee-wee while my brother was using the urinal. The mysterious man in the bathroom never did anything to him physically, which I am incredibly thankful for. After this man had began questioning him he quickly got out of the bathroom to tell me. I remember myself growing increasingly angry at the thought of someone hurting my brother in any way, but I was busy conjuring up the things I would do to hurt the man instead of confronting him as he left the restroom. I don't know why I didn't tell anyone in the store or my mother. I think I was just caught up in the moment and blinded by my anger, but above all I was relieved that my little brother was okay. There's been no other experience that I've had with a predator, but every now and then I'll be reminded of this story and will feel that anger begin to resurface. I would do so much for him without a second thought, but I regret not acting immediately and telling my mother or another adult before he got away. Creepy Dominic's bathroom guy, let's never meet again. Number 8. So I basically just discovered the sub and binge read a large amount of it and realized I have a story or two that belongs here. This one occurs in the early 90s when I'm 6-7 years old and my younger sister is an infant. She is old enough to sleep through the night. We lived with my mom in a 2-bedroom, 1-story house. I shared a room with my sister. I had bunk beds, she had a crib, but I often slept in my mom's bed. She had a giant fancy king-size bed and the only VCR in the house. We liked to watch movies and such to fall asleep to, and I often had to wait for my sister to fall asleep before I could go to bed, so many times I didn't bother. It should be noted that the king-size bed was from when my mom was married and was too large for her current room. There was basically 1/3 meter, foot, clearance on each side, and it barely ended before the doorframe, which was on the side I would sleep on, started. This was one of those nights where I fell asleep on my mom's bed. I awoke to her screaming. She just said something like, "There was someone there," before running to get the phone and calling the police. Between talking to the dispatcher, police, and me, I found out that she had woken up to see a man standing over me. When she screamed, he ran out. The police searched for a while with dogs and tried fingerprinting the sliding door in our kitchen/dining room, which was ajar, but didn't find anything. Though this alone is a bit freaky, there was seriously barely enough room for a grown man to walk between my side of the bed and the wall. The worst part probably is that man's presence didn't wake up my mom. It was my sister crying in her crib from our bedroom. She realized that the man had obviously gone into my room first and accidentally woken up my sister looking for me in my bed. The bunks were arranged so the ladder faced the door and you had to physically enter the room to see inside the bottom bunk. If I had fallen asleep in my bed, or if he hadn't woken up my sister, well, I can't imagine it to have been a positive outcome. We adopted a chow chow pretty soon after that. Number 7. This happened to me around a year ago. I'm an 18-year-old girl, and at the time, I had just finished my first semester of university. I'm not sure if this is relevant, but I have braces, so once I open my mouth, people assume I'm 13 or 14. I'm not even joking, it happens all the time. It's to the point where it's just depressing. Anyway, my mother and aunt were both going to a doctor's appointment. The two of them were on a diet and each month they had to have a checkup with the doctor to see how they were progressing. My mom asked if I would go with them, and join them for lunch after the appointment. Since I needed to buy a birthday gift for my friend and the mall was located near their doctor's office, I asked if I could pick up a present while they were at their appointment. After I would join them for lunch, they agreed to drop me off and come back once their appointments were finished. My first encounter happened while I was looking at anime and comic book merchandise. I was looking at keychains and lanyards, when I noticed someone trying to get my attention. I looked up and turned, since the individual was standing to the right of me. A lanky older man, holding a stack of DVDs, was looking at me. He said hello, or something along those lines. I didn't want to be rude to a complete stranger, so I reply with a wave, but try to seem uninterested. I really didn't want to talk to this strange man. For one, he was far older than me, or at least looked like it. 2. He looked like he had just crawled out of a basement, his clothes didn't quite fit, and looked rather dingy. This man's eyes were also very red and puffy. Aside from all that, he had an unsettling aura. Despite my seemingly uninterested reply, the man continued to talk to me. I kept responding with dull yes and nods. He was telling me about how he liked the store and how it had a lot of items that other stores didn't. After maybe a minute of really wanting this conversation to end, I pretended to be really into looking at a piece of merchandise on the shelf. I'm guessing that's when he got the hint, because he walked away. A wave of relief washed over me, and I quickly bought my friend's gift and exited the store. Luckily the man didn't follow me. I have no idea if the man was just lonely, or if he had other dark intentions. After, I went to other stores without incident. So, the suspicious male was out of my thoughts. When I finished, I waited for my mom and aunt in the food court. The food court at my mall is at the entrance. There are large glass windows and doors that give a clear view of the parking lot. I sat by the windows, so I could see my mom's car once it pulled up. Most of the individuals in the food court were seated away from the entrance, so it was me and one other woman sitting by the windows. I was seated, my attention directed towards the parking lot. Suddenly, a guy comes out of nowhere and starts waving, trying to get my attention. I was a little apprehensive to acknowledge him, having the memories of before return to me. This is a completely different man, but he has the same creepy aura. This man doesn't say anything other than a barely audible "Hey." He wasn't trying to start a conversation like the other guy. What he did was far more terrifying. This guy starts waving his hand in a follow me motion, while walking to the doors leading out of the mall, continuing to stare at me. I was thinking, no way dude, there is no way I am following you out of those doors. I noticed the woman sitting at the table behind me was clearly watching the man. So, I took out my phone, intending on opening an app, thinking it would make the man leave. I felt safe enough. We were in a mall with many other people. If this guy tried anything, I could scream and draw attention to us. Thank God my phone started ringing. My mom was calling to tell me that she was outside. The guy motioning for me was still standing 2 feet away, as if waiting for me to follow him. I hastily answered my phone saying, "Oh, you're here, I'll be right out," while hurriedly grabbing my bags. The man quickly walked away. I exited through the double doors, located in the opposite direction the man went, and rushed to my mom's car. When I got inside, I breathed the biggest sigh of relief. However, I couldn't help but think about those two creepers. Were they working together, or was it all just a coincidence? I'm glad I didn't have to find out, and I hope no one else ever did. So, creepers from the mall, let's not meet again. Number 6. When I was in 8th grade, I was kind of a loner. My friends were casual at best, the kind you say hi to in the hallways but don't eat lunch or really hang out with. I liked that just fine. I was happy to read my books and get through the shitty times of adolescence in peace. I wasn't a pretty or outgoing girl, so people seemed content to let me be. There was a boy in our school who everyone knew and seemed to despise. Michael was scrawny, kind of weird looking, and quiet, so I guess he was easy to pick on. I'd heard a lot of the girls say he was creepy, but I knew how mean they could be and felt bad for the kid. I started saying hello and asking him how his day was in the halls between classes, making sure to give him a smile, just trying to be nice. At first, it was great. I would see his face brighten and he legitimately seemed to enjoy my hellos, which was a welcome break from being ignored. The library being my usual haunt, he began to sit with me. We would just read for the most part, sharing the silence companionably. He began writing me notes and leaving them in my locker, or slipping them to me between class. Again, at first it seemed harmless. Just thanking me for being kind, saying he was so glad to finally have a friend, telling me how much he enjoyed being around me. However, after 2 weeks, the tone of the notes began to take a turn. He began commenting on my looks, saying how cute I was, and how he wanted to be my boyfriend. I was young, naive, and very inexperienced in these situations. I didn't respond to the notes, verbally or with a written reply, and I guess I didn't really let on that anything was wrong. Biggest mistake I could have made. The notes grew pushier, and his behavior became extremely uncomfortable. He would move his chair very, very close to mine, and seemed to follow me between classes and after school. I was desperately trying to think of a way to let him down easy. I didn't want to be like the mean girls and just straight up tell him to fuck off. Finally, before school one day, everything came to a head. He slipped me a note in the library and told me to read it now. I walked over to one of the nearby couches and did so. Of course, Michael followed right behind me and sat with me, scooting until he had my legs pressed between his leg and the arm of the couch. The note informed me that I was his girlfriend, and I was sexy, and he wanted to do things to me. Thankfully, he didn't specify. I was a pretty innocent as a young teenager, and even just this note sent my brain into panic mode. As I sat there, paralyzed, just trying to think of a way to tell him no, I felt his hand touch my knee. I looked over at the guy in utter horror. All I can remember in that moment is that his gaze wasn't focused on my face. His hand slowly rubbed up my thigh. It was the most disgusting feeling I've ever gotten from another person. I was done. I grabbed Michael's hand, hard, and removed it from my leg, shaking my head when he finally looked up at me. His expression was scary. I jumped up and practically sprinted to the cafeteria, sobbing by the time I reached my usual loner table. I called my mom on my cell phone, not knowing what to do, and she told me to go about my day and we'd talk about it when I got home. The thought of having to go through the whole day, knowing I'd see him again, was stomach-churning. But I managed it. I told one of my casual friends about what had happened, and she stayed by my side that day. When I talked to my mom in depth about it and showed her the accumulated notes, she got angrier than I'd ever seen her in my life up to that point. To make a long story shorter, she took me to see the principal and made me tell what happened, along with showing him the notes and threatening to go to the police if Michael wasn't dealt with by the school. The principal suspended Michael and talked to his father, and after that Michael never bothered me. Thankfully, I went to high school soon after, and moved to a different school district. I haven't seen him since leaving junior high. I've kept in touch with a few other friends from my junior high days, and they have periodically informed me that Michael still creeps on girls, even though he has a kid now. So, just in case. Michael. Let's never meet again. Number 5 is story happened to my sister and her friend last year. To put things into perspective, me, nor my father lives there, my sister was 10 years old at the time and my mother was at work. I have never gotten many details, but from what I've been told, my sister and her friend were at a playground. This playground is in the middle of a residential area with lots of bushes and most people around that area were either at work, or school children, so it gets pretty desolate. Apparently, my sister was approached by a balding, bearded drunk who told them that he had a bunch of bottles in the bushes that they could have and recycle for money. Of course, my sister saw through this obvious lie and the two left. Apparently, this asshole runs after them, but my sister is a fast runner and our mom's apartment was just a block away, so nothing came from this. The friend apparently filed a complaint to the police and the guy seemed to have a reputation in the town. I don't think my sister ever met him again, but since then, I insist on following her to that playground and have even planned to bring weapons, just in case we have an encounter. Despite being 5 foot and shorter than my little sister, I truly believe that I would have hurt him if I met him. So, creepy drunk, stay the fuck away from my sister, or any children for that matter.